Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ferrigno Freedom Channel. I'm Dante Ferrigno, and I appreciate you joining me today. We're going to be talking with a person that I met on Facebook because he posted this several months ago on the Ferrigno Freedom group page. And just so you know, if you're not familiar with the fact, I do have a group page that is private so that people can share information about what they're doing on this diet only with other people who are interested in this diet. And that way it doesn't get showing up in all of your other post and with your friends and things, because sometimes it might be difficult, I know, trying to talk about an all meat diet with everyone you know. And then I also have the Ferrigno Freedom Facebook page that is public, that you can post or see things that are going on with my channel here. But I met Dan McClure on this site because he had posted this image talking about his journey, and I thought it was very interesting. He said, "Thanks for the ad. Just completed my first year on carnivore, lost everything. Weight, high blood pressure, inflammation in all my joints and all my 4XL pants and shirts. Dante has been an inspiration for me on this life-changing journey, and I'm happy to be a part of this carnivore lifestyle." The picture alone says everything you need to see, because he has had a total transformation in the way he looks, and also, as he's pointed out, in the way he feels and in the way his health is going. So I thought it would be interesting to have Dan come and tell us a little bit about his story, now that it's been well over a year that he's been doing carnivore diet. So we're going to bring him in just a moment, and I thank you for being here. When I'm editing, sometimes it's really hard to have time to get up and make something to eat. That's why I love carnivore crisps. I keep a bag handy just in case I get a little hungry, so that I don't have to be distracted from my work. I can stop for a moment, have some delicious food that is perfectly on my way of eating, that has been so good for my body and so good for my mind. Beef brisket is my favorite by far of all the carnivore crisps. Get yours at carnivorecrisps.com and use my coupon code DANTE, D-A-N-T-E, to save 10% on your order. I hope you love them as much as I do. All right, how you doing, Dan?
Oh, I'm doing well.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was just sharing a little bit of the information that you shared on the Facebook group page a few months back with the audience here, and it struck me so much that I remember I took a picture of it. But like a lot of things I do when I'm on this channel, a lot of times it kind of got shuffled to the background, and I was going through a lot of my archives, and I came across your picture again and your story, and I thought, man, that sounds very interesting. Sounds like something that might really help a lot of people out, because you seem to have made a miraculous transformation. And I thought we'd have you come on and tell us a little bit about your story, because I think the more people that get to hear about these real stories from real people who have gone through this change that comes from the carnivore way of eating, that the more people are going to be able to realize that this isn't just a fad, this isn't just something that's people are faking or making up, that this is changing real lives, and that if they know more real people are going through it, then they realize that, hey, maybe this can happen to me too. So we've already seen the picture and kind of gotten a breakdown on what you went through, where you talked about losing everything, your pant sizes and your high blood pressure and I don't know how many pounds, but we can get into that in a moment. But how about you start by telling us a little bit of your background and what life was like before a carnivore diet? What kind of brought you from where you were to where you are, and maybe even a little bit of your older history, like what you dealt with struggling with weight or anything like that, if it was ever an issue.
Well, yeah, sure. Early in my life, I was very athletic, played a lot of sports, did all that kind of thing. And then once I grabbed onto a career, it kind of slowed those things down. And when that happened, that's when I really started getting into the the quick eats, the fast foods and things like that, and just becoming more lazy about my activities, participating in sports, even softball, anything, everything. And all those things got laid to the side, and I just kind of concentrated on my career. So I got into law enforcement in '95, and still in law enforcement. I'm the fish and game chief up here now.
Where's up here, by the way?
Northwestern Montana.
Oh, wow. That must be exciting.
Yeah.
My wife and I had often talked about retiring there, except that I couldn't stand the cold. But
Mhm.
it's beautiful
Yeah,
country up there.
that runs a lot of people out for sure. But so things just kind of progressed and caught up to me over time. And I tried probably every diet out there. As I got older, I would say my late 30s, early 40s, I start putting on weight, and I wasn't doing anything to handle that issue. Just kind of let it happen, kind of a thing. And next one day, I just kind of woke up like I was 50 years old, and I had this excessive weight, and I was really depressed, and I couldn't do a whole lot. Uh, I mean, walk into the mailbox to check the mail, I'd literally get winded.
What was your
And
weight back
coming,
then? What was your weight at the highest?
my highest was 304.
304.
Yeah,
I
and that
remember when
was
I first saw 302 on the scale. That was the first time I decided I got to do something. But I didn't make the life changing things that you have done when I just realized it was weight. Were you were you athletic more when you said you were into sports, but were you like athletic build and usually kind of trim when you were younger?
I was definitely trim. I wouldn't say I was muscle bound by any means, but I was. I like the athletics of softball, basketball, things like that,
Hmm.
moving sports, opposed to like golf or bowling or something like that. But I was active in those sports daily, and um, when I put that to the side, that's when the weight started coming on.
Yeah. What was your weight like back then? What I'm trying to get at is that, not everybody had the struggle with their weight all their life. And it sounds like that's the case for you, or you didn't have that big struggle early on. And a lot of people do find themselves in a position like you're talking about where they just let the ease of accessibility of poor quality foods catch up to them, and then
Mhm.
they're looking at themselves and wondering, how did I get here? So it's good
Mhm.
to have a story from somebody who's coming from that background. I mean, did you ever feel like, this is going to catch up to me? Or
Well, when I got on that scale that morning, I mean, I didn't notice any of it prior. I mean, I was just living life,
yeah.
and I didn't seem to, I had, up until I really got heavy, I was still able to go hiking in the mountains and do all those kind of things. But it was like all of a sudden in my mid 40s to 50, that 5 year period, it all of a sudden, everything that I did in the past hit me. I mean,
Mm.
my vision started. I had to start wearing glasses, things like that. I mean, it's life changing things for me anyway. And then when I hit 50, it was kind of like, holy man, this nonchalant, do whatever you want part of my life is behind me now. I got to stop and I got to take control, because at that point I was on high blood pressure pills, and I was forced to go talk to a diabetic dietitian. I was requested to go talk to the heart specialist and do some testing there.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, this message in my head was like, you have to do something, or you're going to be fed pills. And I had family growing up that I remember watching, my grandparents with bottles and bottles of medications. And I didn't want to be that guy. So I just decided I needed to try something that worked. I went to look back at some of the old diets that I tried. As a matter of fact, which is really crazy, um, the year prior to 21, so 2019, uh, reaching for whatever could help me, I was a vegan for 6 months.
Interesting.
And
How'd that
yeah,
go?
I lost. Well, I did lose weight. I lost 60 pounds. It was a lot of activity. I forced myself to move around, and it was difficult. Everybody that knew me, though, said that my skin tone was not right. It was off color. I was pale. Didn't feel the greatest, but I felt better because I wasn't carrying any weight. That 60
Yeah.
pounds meant a lot. Yeah, it was just the weirdest thing. And then when I got off of it, like it literally was 6 months. And when I came back, just going back to I guess the American diet, eating pizza and drinking bourbon and watching baseball, being all American, right? I put all that weight back on and then some. And it was December of 21, that same year. I hit the 304 mark on my scale, and the switch came on. So then I had to find something, right? I had to figure out something. I definitely wasn't going back vegan, but I had to find some other avenue to lose weight and be active. And so I start looking around the old YouTube University, and I came across Sean Baker's videos and Ken Berry's videos, and that was a lot of information. And it was December 30th is when I saw the scale at 304. And I literally sat there and watched TV because I was good at that point. And stumble across those videos, start looking into carnivore. And then on January 1st, I stumbled on to one of your videos, and I was like, oh, look at this guy. Like, this is exactly who I am at this point in your early videos. You were talking about the things that you were noticing with your body and the deficiencies and things like that. And I was like, okay, this guy is hitting this very same things that I'm feeling right now, what I'm going through. So it was at that point that I'm like, okay, whatever this lion diet is, this carnivore thing, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person that if I'm going to try something, it's 2 feet. I'm jumping in it and I'm going into it. It doesn't matter what I have to do. And so on January 2nd, I jumped back on the scale because at 304, okay, I'm done. I'm not eating nothing no more. I'm done. I basically water fasted for a couple days. And when I jumped on the scale on January 2nd, I was 299. So that's when my carnivore journey started.
Okay.
And I struggled with it. I had no idea what I was doing. I was grasping at every video I can find, like, what am I eating? And literally started out eating hot dogs and weird things like that. And then I soon got away from that. Once I start watching more of your videos and other folks' videos, it's like, okay, so I'm in a position where, living in Montana, I hunt. So I have access to elk and deer and bison. My wife, she raises beef, sometimes pork and chickens. So I have access to the critters. And so then I just started it. I quit everything that day. On January 2nd, I stopped. I didn't go after the cookies, the chips, or anything like that. I just said, that's it. I'm not going to eat except for meat until I figured some of that out. And I struggled. The first month and a half, I struggled. There was some demons to be fought with the sugar addiction and the breads and all of that stuff. And it was tough. But I did not waver. I just kept on going on. And in about 2 months is when all of a sudden I start feeling different in my body. And it was like it finally detoxed.
Yeah.
And everything just started to happen. On January 2nd, when I got on a scale, I didn't hit the scale again for like 3 weeks after that, and just stayed off of it.
Yeah.
And then when I got back on, I can't remember exact weight, but I mean, I had lost 15, 20 pounds probably in that month. I was amazed, and I felt better. I still had a bunch of weight because I had a goal weight. My goal was to reach 240 pounds by July of that year of 21. And I reached my goal weight in 3 months. I was 260.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and I was eating healthy. I mean, I was eating meat. That's all I was eating. And I've never felt the way I did in that first, well, even 6 months of eating carnivore. I felt the same as I did when I was in my 20s, when I was
Yeah.
playing sports. When I had energy, I sleeping good. I did everything that you had said in your videos. I mean, because I'd watch everything, right? I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. It's exactly how I feel right now. And you're a year ahead of me. And so I'm looking forward to what's to come, you know. And it's sometimes it's difficult. I'm not gonna lie. The food addiction is real. I from time to time, you know, birthday parties, something like that, I'll grab a piece of cake, and it's like, oh my gosh, you know. And it's like, okay, that was it. I'm done. I'm not doing that again. I'll get back on it. And what I would notice though is when I would eat something like that, I would notice instant issues the next day.
Like
Joints
what
would
kind of
hurt. My
issues?
fingers,
Yeah.
like my fingers would hurt. The joints would hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And a good 2.5 days or so, it'd be gone because I wouldn't be eating it no more. So it would be gone. The funny thing for me is locally walking around town after, you know, 8 months, 9 months, all these people would see me like this drastic weight loss. And I've never felt better in my life. And they're like, are you okay? Is something, you know, everybody was assuming that I was dying on the vine here. And I'm like, man, I feel great. You know, what's wrong with you guys? You
Isn't it
know,
amazing how
and
people jump to that conclusion when you're finally getting healthy? They don't have anything to say when you don't look healthy or feel healthy, but when you're starting to switch it around, it is interesting, the response. But you know, I think all of us are kind of the same in that we project our own problems on other people, and sometimes we see something like that, we don't want to assume that they're making gains that we aren't making. You know, I don't know what it is, but I know that socially we can be damaging to each other. And that is an
mm,
interesting aspect of this, how folks can kind of drive you backwards. And also, I think sometimes the food addiction part, because you mentioned it was at parties and things like that. I'm
mm,
sure there's other instances. If you're in law enforcement, you probably eat out with a lot of people, and that can make it
mm-hmm.
difficult. Can you talk about some of the struggles you've had socially managing eating a carnivore diet?
Yeah, absolutely. So when people would ask, we'd go to restaurants or something like that as a group, and we'd talk, you know, shop. But when it come time to order something, I would order like a ribeye steak. That's it. And the waitress said, well, you know, she like, what kind of potato, what kind of this or that. You can keep all that. I don't eat all that. I just eat steak. Well, then that would change the whole conversation at the table, of course, because there'd be new folks there at the table. It's like, what are you doing? You can't do that. You're gonna get scurvy, and you're gonna get this and that, and you're gonna die. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you for your input. You know, I did. It was challenging, but it was initially when I first started. It was just finding what to eat. You know, like before you go to McDonald's, you order up a burger and fries and a drink. And now I'm going, if I have to eat at McDonald's, which I haven't eaten there in a year and a half, but if I was going to eat there, I'm looking at just the burger patty,
Yeah.
you know, kind of a thing. And then people will just look at you like, what the heck? You know, and I'd be willing to pay the full meal price, whatever, but just give me the burger. A lot of people that early on when they were trying to save me from myself because of my choices, now those same folks are coming to me, you know, under the cloak of darkness, really, and asking me questions about it because they want to try it. They want to do it. And I support them with that. But I just explain to them how difficult it is in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that if you can kick the first 30 days, you're on a good road, you know. And if you get past 30 days and you get into 60 days, the road is just easy. And everybody's going to feel it and see it, and they'll more likely stick to it after that. But yeah, early on, it was a whole lot of battling. When I went to my 6-month physical, I had not went to my doctor, and I don't advise people to follow me on this at all, but this is my opinion of myself. But when I decided that I was going to do the carnivore diet or the carnivore way of eating, I hate calling it a diet, but doing the carnivore way of eating, I just made that decision in my mind. In my opinion, I was on the road of dying anyway. I was eating pills and heavy and all these things. So, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And
Yeah.
when I went to my doctor, in my profession, we have an annual physical.
Yeah.
So when I went to my doctor, he's like, "Oh, are you doing great? You still vegan?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm actually carnivore." And he's like, "What? What's that?" And so I just told him what I was doing. He's like, "Oh, that's not safe," and blah blah blah. And it was a good discussion. And I told him, I said, "I really don't care what your opinion is on it because I'm going to do it anyway. There's nothing you can do to me to make me change my mind otherwise." I said, on this diet, in that 6 months, I was down to 230, somewhere in there. We had this discussion. He says, "You still taking your high blood pressure pills?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he says, you should have came and talked to me about this and that because we have to wean you off of that prescription. And I said, "Well, doc, here's the deal. When I was feeding my face with pizza and bourbon, you didn't want me to come in here and talk to you about that. So I wasn't going to talk to you about this. It might have been reckless. I don't know. But I got through that, and I've never taken it since. And my blood pressure that day when he took it was back normal.
Wow.
And he was impressed. So then he says, "I would like to do some blood work." And I'm like, "Absolutely. I'll tell you what, if you want to pay for it, you can take all the blood you want." And he's like, "Okay." And so I gave him 7 vials of blood that day. Had to go back to the heart specialist and all that stuff. And I was more than welcome to do all this because I was curious. And when I went to the heart specialist the first time, whatever their ratio thing, their scale is, I was at a 6 on this scale of potential heart attack or stroke within the next 10 years of my life. Because I was at 304 at that time when I did it initially.
Oh, okay. That's when you're talking about 304.
Yeah. So then the 6 months when I went back, I was clear down to a 1. And that heart specialist was asking me, he says, "Oh, what have you done to lose the weight?" And I said, "Oh, I eat carnivore." And he's like, "What is that?" And I said, "It's meat. I eat animals. That's all I eat. I don't eat nothing else." "You don't eat vegetables?" "No." I said, "I don't eat nothing else." And he told me too, he's like, "Well, I don't know." He says, "I'm open to diet plans, but he says, is it sustainable?" And I said, "Well, I'm 6 months into it. I don't know, but I'm going to continue with it and we'll see." So he was totally amazed at the fact that I went from a 6 to a 1, whatever that means in his field. I went back home, went to the doctor the next week because my blood panel was done and everything was checked out normal. He literally shook my hand and told me that he has to look more into this. He told me I should start a podcast, and I'm like, "No." I said, "You're in a position to make change." I said, "You see people more than I do. You should talk to them about it."
Yeah.
I said, "And if they're interested, they can come talk to me, but not until they've talked to you."
Well,
I said,
just the
"I'm
fact that
proof."
just the fact that they took a direct interest, especially with the first doctor, because you sound like you were kind of confrontational, and I can understand that because I had been going to my doctor and felt like I was getting nothing, no information, nothing useful to make myself healthy. And then when I find it on my own, I was ready to be confrontational, but in general, they were mildly supportive in the sense that they would say, just keep doing what you're doing, but they didn't want to know more about it. So the fact that your doctors in both cases took an interest in your case, as if to say, this goes against everything I've been told, but here I am looking at the evidence, how can I ignore this? That's kudos to both of those doctors, just for having that position of thinking. And I think that those are the kind of doctors that I'm talking about when I say that I don't want to give up on the whole medical system. People who are willing to look at the evidence that's right in front of their eyes and not think about all the comments and pop culture. I was watching City Slickers the other day, and the guy talked about when Curly died. He said he eats bacon at every meal. You can't do that. And I thought, well, he was like 90 something years old when he died out there. So, I mean, I don't know that that was the solution. And then I remember watching Beverly Hills Cop and hearing Judge Reinhold's characters talking to the guy who played Taggart. And he was talking about all the red meat that is in his bowels because he eats a lot of red meat. And I think it's no wonder people have all these misconceptions in their head. Is not only have we been told by the nutrition specialists throughout the 80s and 90s and 2000s that eating red meat was bad for you and that you should be eating wheat and grains and all these things that are at the big part of the food pyramid. And then on top of that, you got pop culture references constantly making it sound like people who eat a lot of meat or, those are the unhealthy ones. And really, it's when you eat a lot of anything, you could eat plenty of meat, but if you're pouring sugar into it and all those other things, that's where the problems are coming from. I mean, I remember when margarine was pushed as a healthy alternative. And now we realize that that's just like, it's like eating plastic. So like I say, for a doctor to push through all of that, not to mention what everybody in the community is probably telling them, the medical community that says you got to stick to these guidelines because in some cases, I don't know how it works, but I get the feeling that if they don't toe the line, that they can lose their license or they can be put under pressure by whoever their superiors are to not veer from the path that they've been told to go on, even though they don't have a lot of training in nutrition. And the more doctors recently, their training all seems to be in prescribing medicine because the pharma companies seem to have control over the medical institutions that teach all these doctors everything. Were these older doctors or middle-aged or younger or?
Probably same age as me, 50 to 55, somewhere in there.
They'd heard the same things we had then.
Yeah, absolutely. They were the first doctor that did my physical. When we were done, he shook my hand and he said, "You totally destroyed my education." And I said, "I'm sorry." And this is a small town doctor, so he was amazed by it, and he said that he was going to look into it for himself as well. And I said, "Well, you should. If you have any questions, give me a call and I won't charge you."
Have you heard from him again since then?
No, I run into him, but we don't talk about the carnivore. He asked me if I'm still carnivore. I said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." And then since my change too, I've got local guys here that have started it and been successful on it. It's out there now here as well. When people see me, it's really funny. It's almost like they need to talk to me in secret. Like they don't want no one to know, or they'll call me, "Hey, can I get your number? I'll call you later. I want to talk to you about this carnivore." I'm like, "Okay, yep, there you go." And we have conversation. I have a family member. He lost 126 pounds this year on it, and he's back very active in fighting fires here again where he wasn't before. He's got folks that talk to him now too, that we don't go out there and press it and push it. People ask, we talk, and that's it. I've had a lot of people call me. "Well, I'm starting it next week," and they started it. And I've told them the first months, that battle with the addiction is not easy, and everybody kind of laughs about it. Like, "Oh, it's just quitting this or that." It's like, well, until you give it a shot, it's difficult. It is. I've never been, into drugs or had any alcohol addictions or anything like that. But I can tell you that the food addiction was something I can probably apply to that same issues with the drugs and the alcohol, because it was rough for me anyway.
Did you find yourself attracted to sweets before?
No, I wasn't until I met my wife, and then she was, cooking cookies and baking stuff, and then I got into it. I was too busy for that kind of thing initially, and then when we got married, it was kind of a ready, available item. Yeah. And so that's where I started eating. And it was, for me, early 20-year-olds, I was drinking the Mountain Dews and, the soda. I was huge into soda, drinking gallons of that stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't touched a soda in 2 years now, probably. Because when I was vegan, I was drinking water, and that's when I made that switch over to water. And so I never had the soda issue since then. Now I can't even look at it. I mean, I can just see the sugar that's in it. And so I don't want to go down that road ever again.
So your
So,
struggle wasn't so much with sugar then as much as it was maybe with having easily available other types of food, or maybe available at parties or in situations where you're hungry. And the thing about carnivore is you got to prepare something. And most of
mhm.
the time, depending on your circumstance, you may have to prepare it for yourself, because even restaurants don't, like in my case, the sensitivity I have to the different seasonings and other oils and stuff out there, I can barely even eat out. But I know some
Mm.
carnivores do very well eating out. And it sounds like you eat a variety of carnivore meats, so you're not specific to one type of animal, and you've done quite well with that.
Yeah, I don't eat out as much as I used to for certain. I mean, I cook all my steaks right here, burger. I mean, I'll eat any animal really. I try to stay out of the ocean world. I don't eat a lot. I don't eat fish. I don't like fish. So I don't eat fish or anything from the water for that matter. I just eat anything you find walking around out here in Montana. So some of it is really lean stuff, though, like the elk and the deer and stuff like that is really lean meat. The beef is where I'd get the fats or the pork, stuff like that.
If you get a good fatty cut of meat, you usually don't need to add anything. And some,
Yeah,
like
no.
I did well with deer meat early on too, and I wasn't adding any fat back then. So that's not a big
Yeah,
thing,
no.
is going to look for fat.
Yeah, I don't add much of anything. I mean, I might add some butter to something. Otherwise, our beef is pretty fatty. It's just when I eat the wild game, it's a lot less. I mean, the bison has some decent fat in it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still leaner than a cow,
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's been since my when I got into carnivore, I was only going to do it for the year just to see what happened. And after the year, at the year end, I lost a total of 96 pounds. The lowest I got was 208. It was a little small for me, for my taste. So then I started to um, get more active, and I like that 220 area with working out and things like that. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at now. Is I'm about 222. I weighed myself this morning at 225. So I'm playing in that vicinity. It's kind of like where I like to be. I feel my best at that weight.
One
So
question I
it's
got
been a
is, how
little
tall are you?
6'2".
6'2". Yeah. So you're
Mm-hmm.
a tall guy.
Yeah, so 6'2" at 220, I feel pretty good in that area. So I still get out and do my job even better now. And some of my wardens, that particularly my sergeant, he started doing carnivore as well, and he uses it as a tool off and on. So when he gets a little heavy, he gets right back in it, loses his weight, and then goes back to doing whatever he does. And when he's on it too, he's always telling me, he's like, I feel the best when I'm at this weight and I'm doing that. I said, then why would you stop? It's, but his choices, so
Well, it's a struggle, as
um
you said. It's a struggle with the addiction. It's a struggle with the social aspects. It's hard for people. It's a lifestyle change if you really want to make it something you stick with.
yeah, one of the biggest struggles that I had early on, and even still today at times, but earlier it was the worst, is when I was eating carnivore. And then I have 4 sons here, and they order 3 large pizzas, and they bring that pizza into the house, and it's like this smell of pizza. That's when I used to struggle, and no fault of theirs. I mean, what I'd do is I'd strap on my walking shoes and hit the road and go do 3, 4 miles. And by the time I got back, they were done with the pizza and there wouldn't be none left. So that part worked out. But every time somebody would bring something home like that, because I was the only one in my household doing carnivore, that was the hardest part, and probably the hardest on my wife as well, because initially she'd make my steak and then have to cook spaghetti or with bread and all that stuff for my kids, and it was like, So she had double duty, and then finally she told me I had to start cooking my own steak. So it was all good. But no, but that was the hardest things too in the beginning. Just some of those little things like that, it was like you go places or even in your own home. If you're the only one, it was a little bit of a struggle. So that's when I would take the time to go exercise, go walk it off.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to redirect that energy. That's for sure.
Yeah. So now I cook my own steaks. I do a variety of ways to cook. I do the air fryer now too as well, because it just seems to be the easiest.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to chef up and get behind the smoker and do some other things, but it's no longer a challenge. It's just the way it is, and I understand it, so it's easy to maintain it. So when I go back to see my doctor again, I'll be like, yeah, it's sustainable. You just got to just keep doing it.
How long have you been doing it now exactly? Year and a half, it sounds like?
The Carnivore? A year and a half. Yeah. A little over a year and a half now. Yeah, I'm about a year behind you, I think.
Okay. Well, it takes a little effort, but it is sustainable in my opinion as well. And the one good thing about making your own food is when you go out to eat, you wind up paying twice as much as you would making your own. So, I mean, if people complain about the cost, then that's one way to help bring it down. And avoiding seafood also helps keep the cost down, because, I mean, I think the cheapest thing you can get outside of fish when it comes to shrimp and stuff like that, you're still paying close to $20 a pound for that stuff. That can definitely put a dent in the wallet.
Well, and one of the things that one of the guys that follow, he's new to it. He's in his third month or so. He was asking me initially, he's like, well, I tried this other diet. It cost me $400 a month to do that diet. And it was, it was the secret powders and the potions and things like that he was paying for. And I said, well, you can take that $400. And I told him where I buy my beef in the wintertime. I said, you can go to that place and you take your $400 and you can buy, at that time of that conversation, I said, you could buy 3 ribeye loins for the same price. And you can cut 22 to 25 steaks off of that loin. I said, so you'd have your meals for the month. And it's actually better for you. So that's what he did. And he was like amazed when he come out of there. He showed me the back of his truck was full of meat. And he's like, holy moly, I wasted a lot of money on this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, but now you won't. So,
I've wasted a lot of money on those powders and stuff before in the past too, so I can relate.
Oh, yeah.
We'd like to have something that's ready-made and easy to do, and that's how they get us with those marketing schemes that they come up with all that stuff. But I mean, ultimately, how natural is that? How natural is that to have something made from powder or whatever? I mean, that's definitely not the way we were eating in thousands of years of human history, whatever it may be. It certainly wasn't that, and it wasn't shakes, and it wasn't juicing and all the other things that people come up with to try to find a simple way to get a lot of something that's supposedly good for them. But just making meat seems to be the answer. Have any of your family joined you in the household since then?
Well, my wife she goes on it and she's on and off of it. She's a daycare provider, and she's been running a daycare for 25 years, I believe. She was running it before we met. She's on it for a while, and then she's off. She's not 100%. One of my sons, he's 16. He's on and off it, and they seem to do good with it, and then they're off of it. So,
well, I think it comes down to having that reason. You got to have that reason to make this big of a change, and they may not have that as clear as you did when you were saying, "Oh, I'm on the scale at 304, and I got all these pills," and thinking about your family history and your age, and it's like something clicks. You got to have that click moment to really get on it, I think, is what it comes down to.
It's just not anybody else in my household does it as loyal as I am to it. They just use it as a tool as well. They start to feel the benefits, and then they're back to eating whatever it is they want to eat. No, I think this way of eating, for me, I am an enrolled tribal member up here. I work for the tribe that I'm enrolled in. So I'm Native American. One of the ideas prior to getting into carnivore, I actually talked to a dietitian here, and I asked if there was anybody that could tell me what my ancestors would have eaten. I wanted to try eating what they ate. You know, if it's just deer and elk and fish, roots and berries and, you know, all that kind of stuff that grows locally, because this is where my ancestors lived. So I called it an Aboriginal way of eating. There was really nobody here that could, well, number one, that would support it, because you got to have salads and you got to have fruit and you got to have this, and we didn't have it back then. And that was my whole point, was that we didn't have it back then. Why do I need it now?
Right.
And since nobody could tell me, I was like, okay, well, I thought in my head, what did they have available? Right. So that's when I was like, well, duh, I've got a freezer full of deer and elk and bison, and I'm going to eat that. And so that's what I did. And I just kind of watching the videos and implementing this Aboriginal eating is what I call it now. It makes sense for me. I think is one of the reasons why I had such a fast weight loss and all these other things started to happen, because genetically speaking, that's exactly what my ancestors would have eaten. I just continued with that. And then it was like, okay, the first 4 months, I didn't do any exercising. I just paid attention to what I was eating, and I was losing weight. And then when I start walking, I start losing weight even faster.
Yeah.
I go on my walks in the morning, like this morning. I'd put your videos on YouTube when you're out walking and you're talking about whatever topic it is you're talking about that day, and I just listen to it and walk. And it was kind of goofy, because I was sitting there like almost having a conversation with your thoughts, you know, that you're having. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I wonder if, you know, and then I just kind of go on thinking about things like that as well. It's so, I don't even know. I always tell people that if I could bottle up how I feel compared to what I felt like before, and I gave them an opportunity to taste both of those, they would see the benefits of it, and then they would certainly jump onto this Aboriginal eating as well, especially around here, because I live on a reservation. It's the native folks, to me, that really are in this life of obesity, because this eating is not what we're supposed to be eating. The doctor told me the very same thing. He's like, that's the people you need to talk to. And I said, well, I don't. If they want to talk to me, I'll talk to them,
Right.
you know, but they have to come to me. I'm not going to run out there and tell everybody they need to do this to save themselves. I'm just walking around as evidence in my Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. People see the activities that I do. I quit playing softball 22 years ago, and I put on 100 plus pounds. And this last summer, I'm back playing softball again, and I have no issues at all. And I do a lot of hiking and things like that. And these people that see me in town, they'll stop me and talk to me. Like, how did you get to lose so much weight? Because I want to go out there and I want to hike and I want to do this. And it'd be sweet to play softball again, but that's behind me now. And it's like, it doesn't have to be. I said, if you get into this and you do it and you give yourself a good solid 6 months in it, I said, you can do whatever you want to do. I said, because I'm in better shape now than I ever was, in my opinion. And the energy and just the drive to get up and go do something. I used to hate getting up in the morning just to go to work.
Yeah.
And now I can't wait.
Ready for the challenge.
Let's go do what we're going to do today. You know? So I have nothing but good things to say about this way of eating. I want to tell you thank you personally right here and now, that it was your videos too that got me through a bunch of stuff. The battles that you fought are the same battles that I fought. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to the next years of my life, continuing this and seeing where it is I end up. It's definitely a life changer. I wish everybody would just do it.
Well, I appreciate your comments, but I also want to say thank you all the same for coming and sharing your story on my Facebook group page and then also sharing it here, because these things keep me motivated, because sometimes I get into my own little bubble around here and I don't see all of that change. And sometimes it's very good for me to hear what you remind me of. You just reminded me of how you're not the only one to tell me that they'll listen to me on my walk-in talks, which still blows my mind that people are interested in the things that I'm saying. But I just say thank you, Lord, that I have the ability to communicate something that's helping people, as opposed to just communicating things that in the past were just meant to try to make something better for me, because I find so much more pleasure in trying to make things better for others. But I've talked about in recent videos where my current job has had me walking indoors a lot more. I haven't been doing my walk-in talks. I haven't been doing my rucking like I'd like to. And today was actually the first day that I've gone on a ruck in several weeks. And I realized I need to get back to this, and I need to stop making excuses about the fact that I get a lot of walking at work and just get back to doing it here, because I know that I have a responsibility for those who come and watch this channel to help them stay motivated, because I want to see people happy and I want to see the word spreading through your household and through your community, because it changes people's lives. You talked about how you wish you could bottle this. What you're talking about bottling, I think, is quality of life, because you're going to live as long as you're going to live. And I was the administrator at a retirement home for 10 years. I saw elderly people who were living to extreme ages, but they were miserable. They weren't able to get around. They were in pain all the time. They had illnesses. They were taking pounds of pills. I mean, it was awful to watch. It's like, why would I want to live to be that age if this is what I've got to live to be? I don't want to live in this constant state of needing health care and dependent on doctors and everything else. And that may have been part of what helped drive me to the position that I needed to be in as well. I mean, I'm sure that had an impetus there, but that quality of life is what matters. And for people who look at it and say, well, everybody tells me this is dangerous. If they start to feel that quality of life, they're going to know, I think, exactly what you're talking about. And that's that, well, what difference does it make if I feel better all the time? I'm going to die at some point anyway. There's no guarantee I'm not going to go out and get in the car and die today. But at least over the past 2.5 years, I've had 2.5 of the best years of my life. And I anticipate that that's going to continue as long as the Lord keeps me here on this earth. So that's I think, what you're getting at. One last thing I would like to ask you about. You mentioned that bourbon was part of your routine along with pizzas and stuff like that. Has that changed any?
Yeah, I haven't. I have a collection of bourbon now that hasn't been touched, and it's got dust all over them, and they look good on the wall, but I haven't touched it since I started.
That's amazing. I think if I had it around, it might be hard for me not to have one once in a while. I realized that I just had to put that stuff away from me. But that's amazing that you've been able to do that. And I'm not an expert by any means on Native American living, but if you've watched any movies or watched any TV shows, and whenever they get into Native American tribal living, you tend to hear a lot about alcoholism. And I would think that would be something that would be beneficial to those who are listening to you talk about this, is that it's not just about getting the food changed, but being able to stop putting things in your body that are harmful for you, whether it's smoking or vaping or either recreational or even doctor prescribed pain medicines and drugs and things like that. But alcohol is a huge one that has a terrible effect on people's physical and mental health. And I'm glad to hear that that's been a benefit for you too. Can you talk a little bit about, like, did you feel like you had a little too much sometimes, or was that ever a struggle for you?
No. So in my 20s and stuff, that's all I did. We drank and played softball and traveled and just been 20-year-olds, and
Yeah.
then as things progressed, I got into law enforcement when I was 24. I drank a little bit. I think some of it was to self-medicate from the things that I was seeing, I mean, the car crashes and the people and things like that. The death and carnage was kind of a way to self-medicate and but I didn't have, I didn't run home and pour a glass, it wasn't nothing like that. It was, I enjoyed having a glass and a cigar. I
Yeah,
got
me
into
too.
cigars a little while. It was just, at the time, I believed it was setting my mind at peace. Again, like I said, it's just self-medicating, I think, a problem. And then the heavier I got towards that December, I was drinking more bourbon than anything else. I wouldn't get like drunk, wasted, or nothing like that. It was always available. I had it. I have bottles
Hmm.
on my wall still. Now, when I look at it, it's kind of a reminder to me that it's not good. It's poison, just like everything else. That's not. If it's not going to benefit my body, I don't take it. And since my change, my transformation from where I was to where I am today, it's not a struggle at all. I mean, I like the looks of the bottles on my wall because it's cool. I mean, it's just cool looking, but I haven't like I said, they're all full of dust. It's just a reminder to me that I don't want to go down that road again. I don't need it.
It's not uncommon, I think, for a man in a position that is has a masculinity to it, a man who's a man of the world. Very commonly, alcohol is a big part of that because we see it in the westerns. We see it in our favorite heroes. They're drinking a whiskey, they're having a cigar, and all of that stuff looks really cool. And I think that was a big of the appeal for me too, is that I wanted to be able to have that same macho character, but ultimately it does become a crutch, and you don't have to be a stumbling around drunk for it to be a problem for you, because it's definitely
Right.
affecting your health, and it's affecting your mental health. It can affect your marriage and your family, and it can be devastating to the whole community if it becomes commonplace. That would be, I don't know how to put it, except that I would love to see that be a part of the off branch of what your example is setting there, is that you can help other people break those addictions, because we are self-medicating with things like alcohol
Mhm.
and nicotine and other drugs and things like that. But I think food is another form of self-medication, because we eat those things, we call them comfort food for a reason, because they make you feel good for just a moment. You feel like you're giving
Mhm.
yourself some kind of treat, whatever it is. And ultimately it's not a treat, because it sets you back and it brings you back lower than you
Mhm.
were before. I'm glad you made that comment about it was self-medicating, because I think that's what a lot of us are doing with the food. And then the food industry doesn't make it any easier for us to break free from it, because they found a way to make it super cheap and super abundant and readily available, and they advertise it constantly, and it's just everywhere. So it's that's what I
Mhm.
think makes the hardest thing for the addiction. And then also nowadays, what else have people got to do but go out and eat together? I mean, people aren't going dancing anymore. You don't, when you watch
Right.
old movies from the 40s and 50s, people got together and had parties like adults, not parties like we were when we were in our teens. But now it seems like even when you see people trying to get together today for any kind of a party, it's a free for all. It's like a rock star show in there, and people are going nuts.
Mhm.
So the only thing we have to do just about is to go out and eat food. That's what makes it hard for people. I think that's a big part of it. And by having the life that you wanted with your health, you found an adventure in life and all the hiking and the other things that you miss doing. So
Mhm.
that's I think is what's the one of the most influencing parts of your story, that's probably going to help people, because nobody wants to feel bad. Nobody wants to feel the weight of reality sometimes. I mean, everybody feels the weight of reality, I should say, and the weight of reality can be rather heavy, because life is full of disappointment, life is full of heartache, and it can be difficult. But, we can make it harder on ourselves when we add to it with things that are supposedly giving us a release, but ultimately they don't bring us to that point. Is there anything you would say to somebody watching this right now that's thinking about trying this for the first time? What would you tell somebody if they said, "Dan, why should I do this?"
I think I would tell them that being the result that they could see in front of them, if they want it, they have to dedicate themselves to do it. Yeah, no lies, it is rough. Give it a good solid 30 to 60 days. You're gonna feel it. You're gonna see it. And You know, the only a friend of mine, I told him, I said, the only downfall is I had to get a new wardrobe. That was the only negative. That was the only negative I got out of it. But push through, fight those demons, be victorious over those demons, and get through those dark times of just getting past the sugars and all this stuff. I contribute everything in my mind to sugar, and it's the root of all of our problems. I would just tell them 60 days, do 60 days. And that's what I tell the people that ask me about it. If you give me a solid 60, you'll reap the benefit of it. You'll get to feel what I feel, and you'll get to do what I do, but stick with it.
That's perfect. Dan, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I hope your story will help somebody else to realize that this is the time that you've got to say, screw it, I'm going to get up and do it and just make it happen. You can take control of your health. Nobody else can help you do that. They can help you, and there are some helps they can give, but ultimately it comes down to whether or not you decide, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to take control of my health, because not just for me, not just so I can look good, not just so I can have clothes that I'd like to wear rather than clothes I feel like I got to hide everything, but ultimately so that you can have the life that you need to be there for those who you love, your family, and by extension, you're helping other people in your community, and the word is spreading, and people are getting healthy, and you can be a part of that. If somebody sitting there watching this right now is thinking, I'd like to be able to be a part of that, all it takes is getting started on a way of eating that's going to change so much for you. And I think the carnivore way of eating might be the best solution for a lot of people out there. Some people like me are going to have to go lion diet because I had other issues. It wasn't even about weight loss. That was just a great side effect for me. But I think if you're sitting there with excess weight, you realize that that's not healthy for you in the long run. And it's going to be much better if you can get the excess weight off and start living life. So once again,
Absolutely.
thanks, Dan. I appreciate you being here. If there's anything else you want to add, otherwise, I think that about wraps it up.
No, I think we are good, sir.
All right, brother.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, it was a pleasure, man. I hope to talk to you again soon. Hope to see you posting on Facebook some more, too. Let us know how you're doing. Give us some updates.
Will do.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?
Be sure to check out Ferrigno Freedom Facebook group. This group is private so that you don't have to worry about all your personal information being shared with all of your friends. We're just here to encourage each other and keep each other on track.